Welcome to the Go Time Podcast. Go Time Podcast. With your host, Todd Martin.
Welcome back to the Go Time Podcast. We're at Free Roam Brewery in Boerne, downtown Boerne again. And we have Jeremy Affeldt. Dude, I don't know how you got me into getting home field advantage. This is sneaky.
No, this is great, man. This is a good place to record, and I like to help people out, so I'm glad you're able to come in here and do this kind of stuff because it's a fun little spot to do it in.
It really is. I love the atmosphere in it too. So, Jeremy, you have for those of you guys that don't, because a lot of the listeners on our deal is from all different backgrounds of sports and whatever else. And you, how many years were you in the major leagues baseball? 14
years in the major leagues, 4 in the minors.
And you,
long time.
Wow, that is a long time.
Yeah.
Huh? And then 4 trips to the World Series and 3 World Series championships.
Yep. I went to the World Series with Colorado the first time, got spanked by Boston 4-0. So when you run into that situation, you think that's most guys don't even get to the World Series, so it's a little frustrating. But then I had a chance with the Giants to go 10, 12, and 14, and thankfully we won them all, which is more than anybody expects to ever win. So you went from hoping you'd even get to one to winning way more than you should. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's got to be really cool to be in that. I'm just trying to imagine being on the mound with that kind of. I took my kids to an Astros game. They were in the playoffs a couple years back, and it was just the vibration in there was freaking crazy. Yep. I can't imagine trying to keep your crap together.
Yeah,
in that atmosphere.
When I first felt that, it is very, very true. In the playoffs, especially, World Series is even more intense. The noise, the decibel level is very, very high. And you were in Houston, that's a dome. A lot of times they'll open the ceiling for that. But when we were in Boston, and we had to open up in Boston, that was our first trip my trip ever to the World Series. And I think looking at that team, I'm going to say the only one. I'm saying that was I don't think anybody on that team had ever been to a World Series. And
really?
Yeah, nobody. And so for us to walk in that situation, I remember running into the mound in Boston. I'd played there quite a bit in the American League, but that was my first time back in the National League. And I remember running into that stadium and running onto that mound, and the mound was literally vibrating. The noise, and there's not a lot of people. Boston, people don't understand. Boston doesn't hold. That's now. I think Wrigley and Boston are the oldest stadiums. Everybody has new stadiums except for pretty much those 2 teams, right? Really? So Boston is still the old go behind the green monster, Babe Ruth signatures under there. You sign all these. You sign your signature underneath there.
Dude, really?
Oh yeah, and there's. Everybody. I mean, Stan Musial, you see Mickey Mantle, you see all these guys because they'll go back there and they sign behind the wall, and so it's awesome. But there wasn't a lot of the population back then. Obviously, it was different. Stadium development was different. Seats were a lot smaller, a lot thinner because people were tinier. The dugouts were literally meant for a 5'9" male. So most of us now you'll smack your head on the dugout. I mean, no joke.
That's so crazy to even think about all that stuff. The things you don't even take into consideration on that.
Yeah, everything's developed. The human being is developed, and so going out there, and that thing holds. I don't even think it holds 35,000 people. So in Colorado, holds almost 50,000, right? So you're looking at 30-some thousand, I think it's 31,000 people can be in Boston or somewhere close to that. But the decibel level was so loud, the mound was, it's actually vibrating.
Holy crap.
And newborn babies, I had a newborn at the time, Walker, my oldest son now. He was a newborn. He had to wear earmuffs.
Yeah,
because the decibel level was too loud for a baby, and they had to write. You got that announcement before you got into the stadium. Everything. It was nuts.
That had to have been freaking nuts.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. So where'd you start? So where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I'm a military brat.
Really?
Yep. My dad was in the Air Force. He was a bombardier for a B-52. I was born in Chandler, Arizona. Didn't remember it. Still don't. I mean, it's a real quick spot. And then I think
Chuck Norris is the only one that remembers where he was born.
Yeah, only Chuck Norris. Yeah. He was born 3 times, so it's fine. My dad was in Spokane Fairchild Air Force Base in the early 80s. That's when I kind of had my first memories of a military base. And then we went to Guam. And I spent second, third, and fourth grade years over there in a little island, 10 miles. I think it was something weird. It's like 30 miles long by 10 miles wide. Just a tiny
strip of land.
Tiny island, yeah. And I developed all my early fears there. It's where I got a fear of sharks. That's where I got a fear of the ocean. That's where I developed, my dad was over there during the Cold War. So you developed everything, and through therapy, I've been in a lot of therapy just because I've been dealing with my own stuff and learning my fear of abandonment started over there because my dad would leave, right? And you would never know. I'd wake up and I'd be like, where's my dad? Mom's like, he left. He can't tell you where you're going because it was a deal he had to go do, and he'd come back, right? But it would be a week to 2 weeks to 6 days. You never knew. So it was kind of an interesting development time in my childhood. And then he got sent to Castle in Merced, California, which is basically a Top Gun for the Air Force. It's no longer there. I think it's a prison now. But and so I lived in Merced, and that's when I really I gained my love of sports a little bit when I was, early in my dad's Fairchild days. But you just were the kid that played around. And then Guam, I developed some more baseball. I really enjoyed baseball type deal. And then Merced, California is when I started really developing baseball and basketball, a love for those sports, and soccer, and played that. And then my dad retired. He retired when I was in 8th grade, end of my 8th grade year.
Oh, really?
And then he spent 20 years in the military there. He was married to my mother when they were 18. So and I was born when he was 22. So
he's a young guy.
Yeah, he's young. And then, and we went back to Spokane, Washington, which is where Fairchild was at, because he liked the town that we lived in called Medical Lake, bought some land, and put me into high school. And that's kind of where I went to high school and lived all the way until 2017 when I moved here. So kind of lived there in the off seasons. Yep. So I kind of lived there for a while.
So why Bernie?
Originally, my wife at the time was into horses.
Yeah.
And her horse trainer was down here. She did the quarter horse world, still does, shows horses in that trail, Western pleasure type deal. And I hunted the hill country quite a bit when I played, because it was kind of a spot where you could come in the winter. I like to bow hunt, and when I got done with baseball, I didn't have a lot of ability to scout and sit in tree stands and trying to figure out patterns, because I really love bow hunting.
Yeah.
And then, so I'd come down here and have a good time and hunt some of the ranches down here. And so I like the area.
It's like a secret little hiding place of.
It is.
It really is.
And I would have never known what it was like unless I had to fly into San Antonio and hunt places like Uvalde and in different areas like that. And so I liked the look of the area of all the places in Texas that I would, if I was going to move to Texas, I was only going to go to the hill country.
Yeah.
I'm not a big flat guy.
People don't realize that's even exist. Like, there's so many different facets of Texas.
That's right.
You've got flat, up by the panhandle, all flat. You can see the what's the saying? You stand on your tippy toes, you can see the back of your head.
That's right. Yep.
And then you've got the coast, and then you've got the hill country, and then you've got, like West Texas out desert, and, and then the pine trees of East Texas. It's
That's right.
Like everything that you want in Texas. It's kind of cool.
Yep. I really liked it. And so we came down, and I wanted to have more sunlight. So Washington, it's a beautiful state. I lived in Spokane, Washington, which is the border of Idaho. So I lived in the mountains, beautiful. Love the mountains. Still this day, love the mountains, but I'll visit. I don't need to shovel snow. I'll visit the snow. So, and it got dark. It just does. It gets darker there starting in October all the way through kind of March here, like a 4 or 5 o'clock dark. And
it's crazy.
I wanted to be a little bit more sunshine. So this is a great place to raise the boys.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the marriage failed after 22 years. But I loved it here. I love being here. I love raising my boys in Texas. We're outdoorsmen. We all hunt.
Yeah.
We golf. I'm getting them into golf more now, but
Yeah.
I like being outside. I like the adventure of being outside, and I like the style Texas holds. And unfortunately, I got to start a brewery here. I fell in love with breweries when I played in California. And I was fortunate enough to be able to start one, and I had my own idea of what I wanted it to be like, and we started it, and we're doing great, and we're having a great time, and this is where the podcast studio is at. So everything is kind of falling into place. I've been really enjoying it.
This and the atmosphere here is like what this town needed. I mean, like there was nothing so on the brewery that's really cool. It was that so it's brewery, but it's also like a little pub type deal too.
Yep.
But it's a family atmosphere, and it's fun, and there's something for the 20-30-year-old group to be able to come in and have, have a beer around a, social setting that's, it's a good social setting. That's kind of a cool place.
Yeah, we do a lot of stuff. So we're in an old livery barn.
Yeah.
So built in 1897. And we opened it back up. It was a jewelry store, and so we gutted it a little bit. We opened it up, and we found out, it's been a few different things since 1897, obviously. But you know what? It's been pretty cool to open it up. I mean, we opened it up, and we kept a sign that was in one of the rafters that says "Not responsible due to fire or theft." I mean, that was from an old Willie's Jeep store in like the 30s or something, And then we ripped open more of the walls, and next thing you know, we've got these old windows that were originally in the barn, and they were behind like 2 levels of drywall, and we found them, and we were real careful to remove them, and I took the windows and mirrored them, and there are mirrors that are sitting next to our sinks right here, out by the restrooms, and we've got the old rafters that are original 2x8s, like real 2x8s, which you can't even find anymore, and they're exposed. We got a 8,500 square foot beer garden out back. We've got good music, good TVs. We play sports. But then we have out front where we're kind of starting to change it up. We're eventually going to have a little area where it's kind of more of a take mom on a date, where it's going to be kind of fake grass and some good benches and a fire pit and some chill music. Because you get inside where there's sports, it can get noisy.
Yeah.
And then you got the beer garden. We're going to have music out back, but we're smoking cigars back there, cornhole. There's going to eventually be pickleball. So it's kind of that beer garden kind of Western feel. Yeah. But, man, if Mama wants – and we do good wine here as well. But, if Mama wants a glass of wine or a good beer and she just wants to be – I just need to – I want to relax now.
Yeah, sit back and –
we're going to create that environment for them. So
cool.
It's all ages, all fun. My kids are here. Everybody's dog-friendly. It's great. And I love everything about it. So it's been fun.
Cool. One of the subjects that I like always to kind of talk about is just kind of like the mental aspect of like finding yourself, like how do you get yourself into mentally a place of performance?
Yeah.
Right. And I think that it's something that like translates for business, and it's for, and that's the thing that I'm seeing in what you're doing, right? Is like you see it in a couple different facets, but it's also like I'm seeing it in your business. Like you're passionate about your business, you're passionate about, playing ball and all the other stuff. And how it kind of plays out, in all of those areas. So, I was curious, like, did you have like, first of all, did you have like a ritual? But like, how do you find? Cause I imagine like stepping on a mound, like it ain't even in a regular game, right? But you got to have the same intensity, and then the bigger thing would just be the distraction of a bigger stadium, bigger vibration, bigger game, more on the line. You play it the same way as you do your whatever season. You gotta throw loose and with meaning and be able to focus. How do you get to the mound prepared?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it was a learned behavior, to be honest with you. You start out thinking this is how I prepare when I'm younger, and you figure out it works, but then it's going to not work. And how do you stay on like, okay, what is my routine that I have to have. And sports psychology is developing every year.
It is, isn't it?
It is. And in all, I mean, facets, you can talk about a baseball or an actual, like a field athlete, but then you look at the horse world, they're athletes. And what I don't know enough about it, but what I've always observed about the horse world, the reason why that's even so tough is you have two brain. You have your brain and an uncontrolled brain of a horse. They do what they can actually do what they want. Like you train it to do what it's supposed to do, but they might have a spaz out and you can't control that. And it can cost you a performance, right? Yeah. So the ability to handle failure, and I don't even like the word failure, and I'll tell you why in a moment, but the ability to handle when things get thrown at you that are uncontrollable.
Yes.
Is how you handle that is so much more important than how you handle a controllable.
Isn't that true? I mean, it's
100%.
And I think that's where the learned deal, like it takes so much experience.
That's
to
right.
be able to get to that point, right?
That is the mentored state for me. Like when I'm trying to talk to an athlete, and it does not matter what they do, what rodeos, skiing, golfing, playing competitive dodgeball, baseball, it doesn't really matter. No. Like the uncontrollable state and how you handle that is so much more important than the controllable state, because the controllable state is somewhere where you get to a point where you say, okay, like this is what I need to do to perform. And this is what I need to, this is what I know. This is what I have control over. That is actually the most important thing for you to do. But what wrecks you is getting people to snap out of the fact that they have to quit focusing on the uncontrollable.
Yeah.
So how they react to that. And I mean, when I'm talking react to it, I mean, don't.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to do. Like, right?
Yeah.
Like someone cuts you off in traffic. That's not your fault.
Don't lose your crap.
But very hard to control that. It is a disciplined state of mind. And so what I learned when I had performance stuff is, one, the routine's important, which means how I visualize what I'm going to do. So there's a moment in time where you've got to relax your brain. So the first 4 or 5 innings, I watched the game, kind of pay attention to it, but didn't really get too caught up in it, right? And that 5th inning is where I'm like, okay, now I'm going to stretch. And what I've done is I've triggered my brain to say, you're about to compete, so now butterflies start kicking in.
Yeah, they do.
And so one thing that a lot of competitors, some never figure out, is if you don't have butterflies, then quit.
Oh, it's so true.
If you don't feel the nerves, if you're like, man, I just don't like the nerves, and then that makes them panic. But nerves are good. If you walk into it saying, I don't feel anything, then you might as well stop, because you don't care. You don't care, right? So nerves, for me, when I tell these kids about nerves and what I've learned through my studies is nerves trigger the adrenaline glands, and they trigger all the endorphins that actually make your body say, I have to focus. So to get into a hyper-focused state, you actually have to have nerves. You have to have it first. And if you don't have that, you'll never focus, because someone that's not nervous about it anymore doesn't care enough. Therefore, they don't focus on it enough, because they don't care about losing enough.
No, exactly.
That's why.
You know, it's funny. It just made me realize something that, so I think there's such a big tie and correlation between, like the adrenaline and the adrenal glands kicking in and stuff, and trauma too, right? Because they both, like, there's so much tied together.
That's
right. I noticed it in my kids. Like, so I have a couple kids that that have, like, trauma has kicked in things, and they experienced a lot of trauma early on, and so during that developmental stage should be like a quiet, really, developmental time that you shouldn't be experiencing large rushes of adrenaline, right? I mean, it's not to your benefit, and then your body's starting to learn what ideally what a homeostasis or like a good place would be, right? So while you're developing, getting your norm, right? And when you're getting a lot of adrenaline surges, right, at an age when you're not supposed to, while you're developing, then that develops a norm, and your body starts to kick in and bring in different parts to either counter that or learn how to handle that, and that's where. So So with one of my kids, right, is that they would cause a lot of disruption in the room, right?
Okay.
And which
Kids.
kids,
So
right?
kids.
Like but
kid.
she would thrive in it, right? And what would happen was her norm was like a higher vibration, to make it for an easier way to understand, right? But her norm was like the activity going at this wavelength, right? Okay. Or too much of a higher vibration. And I'm like cool down here with the, low vibration. I want to mellow is a place where I like to be sometimes, right? And so she would create havoc to get the vibration up, because that's where she felt norm. So she was better off if she could get the vibration. And I noticed even with you start to see it with guys like firemen, right? That are run into a burning building and everybody's freak out because they're not used to that. But it's like that. The vibration's gotten so high with a guy that has conditioned himself to handle that vibration, right? That's where he starts to think and adapt. And he can it slows down, because it does not really slows down. It gets up to his vibration, his speed, right? And I think that's kind of crazy, right? That it does that. And so,
but that's exactly what adrenaline does, is it'll actually slow things down.
Yeah.
So you can focus and maintain something, and those vibrations that are going on is almost getting that Spidey effect, right? Like everything slows down. And as you get more competitive and better and better and better, your adrenaline stays the same, but everything gets slower because you've done it before, your brain's done it before, so it's actually somewhat like deja vu for your brain, but that's what repetition is all about.
In that environment.
That's right. In that environment.
Yeah.
Yep. And so that's for me what I gained through experience, and that's what you can't teach. You've got to keep going. You've got to keep doing it. And most people won't, because they don't know how to handle failure.
Right.
And so what I learned to do in my so what I did was I said, I have to set a routine. No matter if I fail or succeed, it's the same routine. So if I go out and I blow a game, I'm not going to change anything I did the day before because I blew a game. I'm going to do the same thing, because then I'm going to go out and I'm going to do well. And so if you focus on, well, what did I do in my routine before that I did well versus my routine that I didn't do before that I did bad? Nothing. You just didn't throw the ball where you should have thrown it. But that doesn't mean that if I could sit after a game and say, did I do everything that I could possibly do within my control to prepare myself to compete? And if I can say yes, it doesn't matter if I did good or bad.
No, you don't change it just because of variable.
That's right. And so for me, a failure is never a failure. I don't believe in failure, and I know you teach a lot on this stuff, but failures are teachable moments. That's all they are.
Yes.
There's no such thing as a failure.
No.
There's ride the wave, win, succeed.
Right.
But the problem is when you get knocked on your butt, you don't quit. You say, well, why did I get knocked on my butt? Well, because you didn't do this, and this. Okay, I'm going to learn from that. I'm not going to just say I quit or I'm not any good. And so what I would tell a lot of people is, they'd be like, I'm not a good athlete, or I'm not a good baseball player. No, you didn't do good at baseball today.
Yes.
That doesn't mean your identity is not in your good or bad. It's your identity is in who you are as a human being. And I'm a warrior. I take on storms. I dig in. I don't back down. I'm not a fight or flight. I'm not a flight guy. I'm a fight guy. That's who I am. So whether I do good or bad has nothing to do with who I am. It's a teachable moment if you don't do right, if you don't do good.
Yeah.
And it's a ride the wave, and don't overanalyze why you did good. You did good because you did these things right.
It's the definition of embrace the suck.
That's right.
If it sucks, but that's fine.
Embrace.
That's where you're
like
gonna grow.
I actually like that. Embrace the suck. Yeah. That's how I did it. So I would hang out the first 4 or 5 innings because I didn't want to get too tight, which I think in competition, don't over prepare, because if you over prepare, you mentally get exhausted. So that when you actually have to do what you're supposed to do, you're spent. So you can't do it.
So true.
Relax. Like, hey, okay. So then I figured out, okay, well, how much time do I need to prepare for my job? That's when I start. I don't do it before it. I don't do it too late. I don't do it too early. This is when I start. So for me, it's innings. So the fifth inning's when I'd stretch. I get my body going. I get my body started to sweat a little bit, and then my focus would start to harness in. I'll watch video a little bit when I get to the field just to know who I'm facing, scouting reports, what I need to execute on this guy. And that way I know it, but I don't really pay. Once I know it, I shelve it for a little bit. And then in that fifth inning, when I'm stretching, then I start, okay, fifth, sixth inning, I'm going to visualize seeing those pitches that I already knew about, me throwing those pitches to that guy in the game, in the moment. Okay.
So when you're throwing those pitches, do you throw, like, in your mind and you're running those pitches, are they like successful pitches?
Executed pitches.
Like, that's so important, right?
Yep.
I was telling somebody the other day, like, the visualization is a great tool. It's a really great tool, but you can screw that up too, right?
Yep.
If you visualize bad stuff, well, there you go.
And it's going to happen.
Right.
The mind is super powerful, and that's what I learned a little bit on the sports psychology. Is if your brain thinks it's already done it, it relaxes. So I see myself in the moment and making those pitches. And it doesn't, and at first it took me a long time because the brain has to be trained just like every other muscle. So I had to train myself to a point where all of a sudden I could actually it would take me 5 minutes. 5 minutes, close my eyes, see certain pitches to that guy, be done with it. Where it would take me 20 when I first come. I had to get my brain to quit going on rabbit trails, right? So I do that.
That's big, right?
Yeah.
The rabbit trails are like, that's the hard part.
That's right.
That's the really hard part. It's not so much of it's training yourself to not be distracted by the rabbit trails, like the what ifs.
That's right.
So what if he comes in and he like, oh, stop it.
Yep.
Like you stay on track with what you're doing, right?
Yep, because the rabbit trails, it's an unharnessed mind. And so what it is it's noise. You have to learn to get rid of the noise because in the moment you have to get rid of the noise. In the moment, 50,000 people just become white noise and I don't know what they're saying. I don't focus on it. It's just actually almost like a sleep machine. It's there. The brain waves just kind of like, okay, this is normal to hear the noise.
So when did the first time, do you remember the first time you experienced that? Where everything turned to white noise and it was white noise and it wasn't the distraction. Like I remember like going into a pen and somebody would laugh or something, and it was just like boom, it'd throw me off. Right?
That's right.
I was thinking about somebody's laugh, or are they laughing at me, or like internalize that.
Yeah, and that's a rabbit trail, and it doesn't even matter if they're laughing.
And you've got to prepare for that too.
That's right.
I mean, like if you ignore that, like nobody, but it's going to take you off on that rabbit trail. So like, was there a point where you just went like, you remember a place where you just went like, and you hit that zone, or what we all call?
So what I learned to do, and it was crazy, is got present with everything. And this is a key that I know veteran athletes that do not understand this yet. So and some of them, they don't know it, but they learn to do it. It's an inherited thing because they just did it, but they don't understand really what's happening. Once I actually was conscious of what I needed to do, it happened quicker for me. So you look at playoff numbers, third best ERA in baseball history in the playoffs. I've got it, right? Mariano Rivera, actually I'm second under Mariano Rivera on relievers. So, and people are like, what did you do different? I didn't do anything different. Well, your season numbers are good, but they're not like playoff good. I'm like, well, the playoffs are like 10 innings worth of numbers, and if I don't give up a run for 10 innings, it's a 0 ERA. I got 70 innings, and I'm tired, and I've pitched 4 or 5 days in a row. Playoffs, you get more breaks, so there's different scenarios there. But I said I didn't do anything different that I did in the season versus the playoffs. And the problem is
I never thought of it that way.
But a lot of athletes, no matter what sport you do, you change the environment based on the situation. So you're in a normal rodeo that you're just like, I'm going, but now you're in the finals of that rodeo. A lot of people are like, oh, it's the finals. But no, it's not.
The environment changed. You didn't.
That's it. I never thought about that.
You should
never change that. The same mechanics of roping or riding a bull, or it's all the same, regardless if there's 4 guys left or if there's 25 guys left.
Yeah, you're just not. You're in a different environment. You are staying steady while everything else is changing. The surroundings. Everybody else is viewing it as changed.
That's
and
right.
Now they're changing what they're doing. You stayed consistent.
That's
and
right.
Your numbers went up.
Yeah, that's right. Nothing changed. So what I said was I got into a game and in the playoffs, and there's guys on first and second, or if there's a guy on first or nobody on, and I look at the hitter, he's taking deep breaths at the plate more than he normally should.
Oh, yes.
A lot of hitters are like, okay, but that's normal. That even I would do that normal. But when I see him take 2 or 3 breaths, and they're like the crowd's going
and you
nuts,
can see
and
it.
I'm like, I got you.
Boom, you changed.
Because you put all the pressure. I'm going to throw a strike 60 feet 6 inches away. That's literally how far I stand from the plate. I have to throw a strike down and away. I'm going to throw a good sinker, just like I would want to throw a good sinker in the regular season. Nothing changes. The field doesn't change. The base, it's still 90 feet to first base.
But changing made your odds go up.
Yeah, because he put all the pressure on himself. His sphincter got tight, and all of a sudden he's like, he's swinging stiff, and he wants to be the hero. A hitter's saying, I can be a hero. And I'm like, I'm going to throw a strike. And now you're going to overswing at something, or you're going to outthink yourself, or you're going to try to do too much. And I said, what if I just try to be the same? And it was better because because how I prepared for a game is the same way I prepared for a game in this regular season and the playoffs. And when you train your body to be routine oriented, nothing changes. And then what I learned was to become very present with the environment. So the brain makes you get tight because it's fighting off reality. So for me, it was like I'd be warming up and I'd look at the score. It's 2-1. Yep, close game. I tell myself that. Close game.
That's it.
It's out now. I'm not fighting. Don't look at the score. Don't look at the score. Doesn't matter. You're overdoing your brain.
Yeah.
2-1 close game. Great. I smell popcorn. And you're not on rabbit trails. You're actually saying, okay, I'm going with the senses. So I would take my time warming up, and I'd be like, I smell popcorn. I hear the lemonade guy go, lemonade, lemonade, lemonade. Heard it. People are like, you stink, Affeldt. That guy just thinks I stink. Great. And I'm not consciously, I'm not worried. I just be like, cool.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to warm up with 6 fastballs right here. Boom, boom, boom. 6. Okay, I'm going to throw 4 curveballs. Boom, boom. I didn't like that curveball. But I'm able to block out the smells. I'm able to block out the taunting. I'm able to block out all the noise because my brain has already recognized that that's there.
And you've been doing it all season.
That's right. And so now I'm like, okay, there's the environment I'm in. Run into a game. I know it's 2-1. I don't get tight. I say, what do I got to do right now in the moment? Where do I need to make this pitch? Because I can't control whether he swings at it. I can't control whether he pops it up, hits it on the ground. I can't control whether my fielders field it. I can only control throwing my pitch to that glove in that spot. That's what I'm focusing on. So now I don't hear the noise. I don't feel the intensity necessarily. I feel competitive. I feel fight or flight, right? Like that's a natural feeling. But I tell myself that, okay, my adrenaline just went up.
That's really profound, right? Because one of the things that so your abilities, right, physical abilities are not a great stretch off of what, somebody else that's pitching in the majors has. I mean, and you don't, not saying that you're not special.
Yeah,
but
right. No,
but I mean, but that it's not like a out of this world crazy difference, right? It's just that you're controlling what you're doing, what you can control, and keeping yourself as steady as you can.
That's right.
And control what you can control, not the variables.
Yeah, because if I focus, if you focus on, say I make a pitch and a guy hits a ground ball to second and he boots it for an error. If I focus on the fact that, dang, he just made an error. I got a guy on first now. Like, if he would have fielded that ball, I'd have 1 out and those are all out of your control. But
waste of time and space in your head.
Yeah, and I focus on that, and now I'm competing like, okay, now I really got to make this pitch because he made that error. No, I don't have to make anything. I get to make a pitch. I don't have to. There's no have tos. The athletes that get rid of the have tos I want to throw a strike. I don't have to throw a strike. I can throw a ball.
Yeah,
I can. I want to throw a strike. And I learned that from Javi Lopez, which was a reliever of mine. He actually has a sports psychology degree. And he said, man, there's have-tos, and that creates intense tightness, and there's want-tos, which relaxes. I want to throw a strike, but I don't have to. 3-2 count, you have to throw a strike. No, I can throw a ball, and he'll go to first.
Yeah.
So I don't have to do anything. I want to throw a strike because I don't want him to go to first. So that relaxes the brain because have-tos always create this, I have to. Right. And so it's all about getting that routine.
A great one, too, is you get to.
You get to. That's another good one. You get to compete today.
I am here and I get to do exactly what the heck I'm wanting to do.
That's right.
Being happy in doing that and not feeling like it's that's another way to not look at the pressure of it.
That's right.
But I'm like, man, I get, like how many, every person in that stands would love to be right where I'm at.
That's right.
And I get to be here and I get the opportunity to do this. And it's another day at the park.
Because I feel like if some of the athletes get that, I get to. So tell me if I'm wrong. When I know that horses feel your pressure.
Oh, God.
It's unbelievable how they can feel if you're tight, if you're relaxed, and they react to it.
Yeah.
Which I think is amazing. I've learned that about horses. I mean, that is why they're therapeutic animals. They help you. So for me,
they force you to focus on yourself.
That's right.
Unless you're, that took me a long time to figure that part out too.
Yeah, but if an athlete, if a equestrian athlete would take into these things into consideration of like, I get to, I want to, I don't have to.
Yep.
I'm only focusing on my controllables. There's 10,000. It's the final four. I'm the final four people out here. Whatever. I'm just gonna ride the bull, or I'm gonna rope this cow, or I'm gonna come out. I'm gonna come off the, like however you guys want the reining. Anything you do, I don't want to try to know. I know the lingo, but I'm just saying anything that you guys do in the rodeo world, the horse world. If you relax, the horse would probably do. You're not gonna worry. The horse is gonna do what's supposed to do.
Oh yeah.
It's when you get tight that the horse is like. So it jumps and goes early or and so for me, this is all part of it, and it's all part of dealing with my controllables. Did I do my routine? Yep, did it. Check. Okay. Did I visualize what I'm going to be doing, what I need to do to succeed? Yep, check. Okay. Now it's like, okay, man, I hear the arena, I hear the music, I hear whatever. Okay, I've already heard it. Now it's done. I was present with it, and now it's gone. Now what do I got to do?
I get to.
Now I get to do this. If you went through that routine, you would relax and compete, and you don't want to lose. So you know that there is that I want to compete, but competitors that can compete relaxed versus competitors that compete tight are going to be completely different people. And it's not they don't care. You're not relaxed. No. You don't care. You relax because you're like, I've already done everything. My brain's ready. I am ready. Yeah. And then then there's that feeling of like, I know I'm going to win here. And there was that in the playoffs for us. I mean, there was that feeling of like, I'll watch, like the other day, MLB Network was on at the brewery here, and they were playing Game 7 in Kansas City. I was the Game 7 winner of the World Series when we played Kansas City.
Yeah.
And I was pitching. And I'm not going to lie, I kind of did a double take because I'm not used to – I don't watch myself play baseball, you know. So I did a double take, and I'm watching the game, and I'm like, I knew the outcome of that game, and I was actually kind of feeling a little nervous. I was like, dang, how did I make that pitch right there? I mean, that was a kind of a big situation. I really was not feeling very good. I know what I felt. I was hurting. My body was hurting. My eye was messed up. I wasn't seeing real. I was blurry. I'm like, how did I make that pitch? But then I was like thinking, wait a minute. That's because I'm not in that moment of I prepared for that. And I made that pitch in that situation in that big of a game with that many people because I was actually in my own little world.
Yeah.
And competing how I normally compete. And I'm actually comfortable in that world where watching it, I'm not comfortable because
I never thought about that. You were not comfortable looking at it and watching it. Being in it is where you spent all your time.
That was where it was relaxing. And that's where fans are like, how do you do that? Well, it's because you're watching and thinking, I hope he actually comes through here. So that's you're watching on hope.
Right.
I'm not hoping anything. I'm saying I am going to make this pitch because I prepared to make it, and this is what I got to do it. I'm going to do it. If I go out there and say, man, I hope I make this pitch, I'm going to throw that thing dead center, and it's going to go 420 feet because I wasn't convicted in my abilities. And fans are never convicted. Fans are always hoping for their team. They're not convicted in their team.
You've been listening to the Go Time podcast with your host, Todd Martin. If you want to know more about Todd Martin Performance Horses, Todd Martin, or the Go Time podcast, you can visit us at www.toddmartin.net, N-E-T. And look forward to coming up with some merchandise here soon. So you guys can support the podcast through that. And look forward to Jeremy Affeldt number 2 coming up shortly.